I'd like to start this tutorial with a shameless plug for my new book that was released in August of 2012 called Getting Started in 3D with 3ds Max, produced by Focal Press, available online, Amazon, etc., and in most major bookstores. Now let's get on with the tutorial. Hi, Ted Boardman here with a tutorial on using the Expose Transform Helper object in 3ds Max. I'm using 3ds Max 2013 here, but it's been around for a long time. This is based on a tutorial that Sean Hendricks posted on his blog at area.autodesk.com, reminding us all of the power of the Expose Transform Helper object. Here I'm going to use it in a bit more practical manner. I've got a scene with a runway on a landscape, an airplane, if I drag my animation slider, an airplane that flies around and comes in low over the runway. It slows down as well as it approaches the runway. I also have one light in the scene at the edge of the runway. I'm going to use the Expose Transform Helper object to extract information that can be used to link up the distance of the airplane from the light to the intensity of the light. That way, as the airplane comes closer to the light, the intensity will increase. As it flies further away, the intensity will decrease. So let's create a Expose Transform Helper object first. Here in my Create category, I go to the Helpers category, Create panel, Helpers category, Expose TM, Expose Transform. And I'll click in the top viewport to create that. I'm then going to align that to my light at the edge of the runway. So I'll use my Align tool and I'll click on the light and let it align itself pivot to pivot. Click OK. And I'm also going to link that object to the light so that they'll stay together if I move the light. So link, H key, just so I can make sure that I get the right light. It's called Photometric Light 035 in my scene. And I link the two together. Now let's go to the Modify panel and see what this Expose Transform Helper object is giving us. It's giving us information from an object. Now we haven't chosen the object yet, but here we can get the local XYZ information, local angles, position, bounding box sizes if that were important to us, and what's important here is the distance to a reference object. That's what we're going to use to control the intensity of our light. At the top of my panel here, I need to have an object that I want to expose the transform of. That would be the airplane in the scene. So I'll click the None button. I'll use my H key and I'll choose my airplane in the scene. So now I have information for the angle of the airplane in the XYZ, both in World and Euler, the local position, the world position, etc., etc. So I'm extracting information, but down here I also have distance to the reference object. And right now the reference object is the parent, which is the world. So you see it's 5641 here. Back up to the top of my panel, and here the local reference node is by default checked to parent. This is because the Expose Transform is generally used as a helper object in character animation, so in a skeleton. And in a hierarchically linked skeleton, an object's rotation is always based on its parent. Well, in this case, that's not what we want. So we're going to click the parent to turn it off, and we're going to give it a specific local reference node, which is going to be the light in the scene. I click None, I hit my H key, and I come over here to my light 035. Now we'll notice that the distance has changed, because now it's giving us the distance, the pivot point of the airplane to the pivot point of the light. So that information is being extracted by the exposed transform helper object. And I can then utilize this information with wire parameters to link the two. Then we'll make clones of the light so that we've got a string of lights on either side of the runway, and we'll see how it all works. Notice and think about what's happening though. Right now the plane is 4,212 units away from my light. As I drag my animation slider so that the light comes closer, that number decreases. So it decreases. Well, if I link that directly to the intensity of the light, that means that the light is going to be brighter when the airplane is further away. I don't want that. I want the light to get brighter as the airplane comes closer. So we're going to make sure that we use the inverse of the distance so that the intensity of the light increases as the distance decreases. So just keep that in mind. In the next tutorial we'll come back and we'll use the wire parameters to hook these two pieces of information up.